Okay, so about 30 years ago, I just found out I was pregnant, and a year before that, Brad and I had suffered a pretty big loss. I had to deliver a child stillborn, so when we found out we were pregnant again, we were thrilled, absolutely beyond thrilled. The first child for us, the first grandchild for Brad's parents and my dad, and so we were pretty excited. And then when it came time to deliver him, we found out that he had Down syndrome. And you go from you're thrilled and this child is going to be awesome and everything's going to be great, and then you're told you have a mongoloid, and your whole world is shattered. Your what you thought was going to be is not there anymore, and you go through almost a mourning for what would have been with that child, and then you start the endless weeks and months of therapies and things like that. And one thing that Chad had to do when he was 6 weeks old is he had to start going to school. And his very first teacher at school was Brenda Tollett. And she was fantastic with him. She's the one who taught him how to crawl, and she's the one who taught him how to eat and to be able to do all those things that a normal child would do. And this was 30 years ago, and we didn't know anybody here in Crossville, and so Brenda and her family soon became like a second family to us. And Brenda was pretty sneaky. She would offer to keep Chad for us so that we could go out, on a date. And she would offer to keep Chad on Saturday nights so that we could have some alone time. And she would throw out there that, well, why don't you just come to church and pick him up? And while you're at it, you could just stay for church. And so it got to be, pretty regular thing that she would keep Chad for us, and we would come to church to pick him up. And it wasn't long before, through that, we got back into church and we both rededicated our lives to Jesus. And you go through all of those things and you think, why is God letting this happen in our lives? Why is God putting us through these tests? And the one constant that we had was the love that her family showed us. And they were the ones that we went to when something happened with Chad at school, and somebody would be mean to Chad or make fun of Chad or things like that. And so by them showing us that love, we were able to step into a role in the church where we started going for ourselves. It wasn't just because of them that we kept going. And you look back on that time now and you think, man, God is so stinking smart. He took something that we thought was awful and he turned it around to where 30 years later, we're all in church. My family serves in church. My daughter is the director of children's ministries here. And so you're able to see in hindsight this wonderful plan that God has for your life. And you're able to see the lengths that God would go to get you to go back to Him, because He so desperately wants that relationship with you. And it's been a long road. And I like to tell people that it's like going from here to Knoxville. The easiest way to go from here to Knoxville would be to hit I-40 and go straight. But we took a lot of the Highway 70s going to Knoxville, and we took a lot of detours and stuff. But the bottom line is that we made it to Knoxville. We made it to that relationship that God wants for us. And there's a verse in Genesis where Joseph's talking about his brothers, and Joseph says that what you meant for evil, God meant for good. And that's kind of how I feel like with Chad and our whole story with Chad, is that some people might look at that and they might think, man, you have a child with a disability, and that's awful, and I don't know if I could do that or not, but you can do it. It's different. It's not what I would have wanted for Chad, but there are so many wonderful things that have come out of having Chad. And I feel like that what some people might look at as bad or evil, God meant for good. And so now we can, you fast forward 30 years later, because Chad's going to be 30 this year, and that just blows my mind. And there's not a day that goes by that we don't consider Chad such a huge blessing in our lives. He goes to work with me every day, and he reads with the kids, and they all love Mr. Chad. And he helps out here at church, and he really, really does help, and he's such a blessing to have in our lives. Now, don't get me wrong, there are times when he can be a little turd and you just want to pinch his head off, but you can honestly see that in our lives we would not be complete without Chad, and that's such a special thing for us. And so that's my story.